Hey there, freaks and sickos. I'm your host, Clark Macbeth, and I got a story to tell. A kind of story that involves a story that really happened. That is a factual, autobiographical story about my life. What I'm about to tell you is the story of my life, and yeah, it makes me think deep sometimes about how things have happened to me over the years and in life in general, and whether I truly deserve it or not. But anyway, life is what it is, and sometimes you just have to accept it. And as you're about to find out, this is not one of those times. That right there is a picture, and I'm not sure if it comes with exit data, but given my recollection of the events, I'm pretty sure it's an accurate depiction and take. This is an X post that says, "Oh hell nah, someone dropped their head on the highway. Hashtag Anthrocon." It has 7 replies, 20 reposts, 493 likes, and 48 saves from the garbage website X.com that is not as good as Blue Sky in any aspect. It was further reported on by FurryTMZ, and all I need to do is change desktops to show you, except no, I had it pulled up already. And it got reported on FurryTMZ in text form. A fursuit has been dropped on the highway. Car. I don't know what that symbol is. Maybe if I zoom it in a bit further, that's, I don't know, ahead. See comments. I am the owner of that fursuit head, by the way. I have it in this very room with me at the moment. But this happened over the 4th of July in 2026, America's 250th. Here is why I am innocent and the defendant is guilty. I admit I front ran this testimony over YouTube, but following that, an unknown individual in a blue Mazda Miata, which is not as fuel efficient or as good as the Toyota Corolla, or as reliable, or as well built or manufactured. It's just fun thing to run a rotary engine on just for the lulz. But I digress. Um, the initial report of the initial reporting left the impression online that I dropped it due to being intoxicated. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, whether it's the court of public opinion or the actual one, if I need to point this out, this is not even half of the story. People think I just took it off because it was hot or something and then dropped it. Like, oops. Uh, like a derp, as they say. That is not what happened with the second half of events. It later became known that the person who owned it, which is myself, is the owner of this fursuit head. I am a furry. And the name of the fursuit and the persona backing it is Metro Circle Transportation Mutt. Metro Circle T Mutt. You know, Circle T, like the symbol for Metro Transit in Minnesota. and many reached the conclusion that the head was destroyed at the time. And I mentioned in the FurryTMZ chat that I would fill in the rest in a YouTube expose, and that is what I intend to do. So, here is my side of the story and the events and the rest of what has yet to be reported on. There was, in the comments of the Twitter or X.com, as it is currently called, post that states that it happened because someone chanted, and I am only going to say this once, this phrase once, this complete chant once, because of YouTube's algorithm. Because YouTube, unless you are towards the middle of a video, will have its head stuck up Victoria's ass, and what the middle is has yet to be conclusively determined. Honestly, I would just prefer that they let content creators just create TV ratings like the ones with the V chip, so that there would be like a complete and total counterpoint to the bullshit that is forced doxing, age verification, completely unconstitutional. But again, I digress. So, the head did not get dropped on the freeway because of an accident. It was intentional. There was a man that committed battery. And any shouting prior can be accurately be described as assault, both before and after the battery event in which the fursuit head was ripped off violently and with intent to destroy it, regardless of whether it wound up on the freeway or, as the person was apparently aiming for, because it was on the far side of the freeway in Pittsburgh, which is like kind of right before the waterfront, and that's only part of it. And I was closer to the end of the waterfront than where it than the convention center, that end of the waterfront in Pittsburgh. So the head was ripped off. It was thrown by someone with the intent to cause bodily harm and to damage my property, being the fursuit head of Metro Circle Transportation Mutt. Here is the full timeline of those events. This started when I chose to make the chant during the fireworks of America's 250th birthday. I have a constitutional right to do this, especially at a publicly funded event in a publicly funded area in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and that's a fact. I have a constitutional right to shout this just as much as anyone who has the opposite political point of view has. If you do dislike the speech, then it must, in turn, be countered with more speech so that the public can get the full context of the situation. And this is what I am going to fill in with this testimony. As the chant was going on, there was a child on an electric scooter, and credit where it's due to generations Alpha and Bravo for having electric scooters, embracing electric scooters and bicycles, and really micro transit and also public transportation in general. I think this is an overall good and positive for society that there is a generational and especially progressive view that is beginning to reject cars as the default form of transportation. In the future, these children might forgo cars altogether, and that could be a trend that expands all over the country. Wherever you live, you can obtain in some form an electric scooter or an electric bike, or even just be drawn to bikes through electric bikes. It might happen this way with children in the future, where they like electric bikes, but they also find that the very lightweight uh, road bike, especially, I've seen people doing that even in very unfavorable conditions in Minnesota. But I digress on all of that. A kid on an electric bike complained that I was making it political. This is completely beside the point and completely out of scope of what followed with the criminal activity that is solely on the defendant. So, what I said was, and this is the point and purpose of free speech, so that it has a point and purpose. It is to protect speech that might otherwise be considered unfavorable in the present that may lead to progress in the future. There are a number of examples of this happening throughout American history. It is the driver of progress. And equally, so is privacy. But I digress. On that, I said to the child, which I have a constitutional right to do, fuck off, have an awful night. And I did so with this in mind, that I can completely infer what kind of TikToks you look at, what kind of content you watch, and the kind of parents you have that enable that. That this child is, regardless of that context, the fact is they are not an alpha male, they are not someone who is what they claim to be in their mind, that they're not as mighty as they make themselves out to be, because they are a child. And worse yet, you willfully traded your own self-respect to the manosphere, to something that cannot make you whole, like self-respect can. You traded it to fealty to some figure. And let me be clear, if Andrew Tate and John Oliver were in a UFC sanctioned fight, and I'm not talking about John Oliver as the character Zed in General Hospital. I'm not talking about John Oliver as someone who has stunt doubles or henchmen. I mean John Oliver alone, as presented on camera in, the HBO comedy series Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. That John Oliver. That Andrew Tate and anyone else in the manosphere, and I am including Joe Rogan, by the way, would lose such a sanctioned fight to John Oliver of Last Week Tonight. The guy with the big glasses, with the British accent, who doesn't like the English monarchy. That John Oliver, the one who was in the Lion King attempt at PS3 graphics film by Disney, the first one, and not the superior film Mufasa, which I was personally very disappointed about. But again, I digress. The head was ripped off. The intent was to damage or even destroy it, which a car, given the material of the head, it's 3D printed resin, and very fragile, it would have more likely been destroyed there than the intended target of the river, where the goal would have been to make it unrecoverable. That's battery. I mean, the head is a part of me. My head got hurt with it taking off, and that is the only crime in the situation, with everything else having legally been justified before, during, and after the series of events. And the desire for justice to be justified. Fursuit heads can cost, at minimum, $500 to replace. And I admit the fursuit I have, Metro Mutt, is a 3/4 partial that's meant to be modular over time, that only after the head is replaced I can say is like Metro 2.0. After the head, but with other parts, it's like, okay, the feet paws, which were destroyed, were left in Pittsburgh, so I replaced them with cheap slippers for the time being. So that's going to be a Metro 1.2, Metro 1.5. Might have something a little more flashy going on with the presence of those feet paws. But again, I digress. Before I get into that part, the part that was most likely to be recorded and posted online to places like YouTube and Reddit forums, such as, I believe it is called Public Freakout, which it was in a public space during a publicly funded event where, by the values of the government, I had every right to do. In that situation, I was wrong. This is Metro Circle T Mutt's head. It has been damaged. There is now a hole in the back that follows all the way through. The tag was wedged inward. That might have been part of asking my friends to pack this while I was manning the car outside the hotel. Oh yeah, that definitely is the hand paw. That my hand paw was just packed in there. That's not part of the series of events whatsoever, since I'm being completely honest with you. But the hinge for the movable jaw was ripped off. And that was the most prominent major damage that happened. I'm not sure whether it should be glued back on or if more resin should be used. I do have context, and being a furry, you're closer to a 3D printer than anyone else in society, and that's just a fact. That's just a fact. Um, anyway, there was damage done to the head, and it's going to cost labor to fix that. The intent was to destroy the head, which was worth $500. And misdemeanor or not, it is illegal to commit assault and battery. This man was the first to shout, and this man, the man that did that, also invoked his daughter, which he was concerned trolling. Like, I have my daughter here. Why are you acting this way? Well, you gave me exactly what I wanted. I'm acting like this to give a live demonstration about how anti-freedom people who like Trump really are. That proved my point completely. Through all of this, I have learned that, you know what, I was the only one doing that on that side. Maybe I should have done it closer to the furry convention, because I wanted that chant to grow and be louder amongst the audience, but instead it happened on the other side, where more of the pro-Trump, anti-American crowd were at the time. and he said, "How about fuck Minnesota?" Like, this was the same guy that ripped off my head. I have recordings of him saying, "How about fuck Minnesota?" And after that, I just decided, you know what? You ripped off my head. You are screaming like a primate, a backwards devolved creature. So I am just going to grab these and make sure that, since you were behind me and you did it and you were the closest person, and this was well short of what the sheriffs claimed was 20, 30, 20 meters, 30 yards, that sort of thing. I know what a football field looks like. I know my distances, and I just had to lurch forward and grab those hands so, he wouldn't be able to do anything with them because I wasn't sure whether he would. I am in just as much of a striking distance of him as he was of me. That, by the way, is an alarm reminding me to wrap this up. I'll do the best I can with that. But yeah, I was wronged. My fursuit head was thrown onto the freeway in Pittsburgh. And with all of this in mind, I do feel safe sharing uh, sharing the depiction of events that happened in actual, like, video form of going and getting the second half of the footage. And the first half is out there. I remember people recording this all the way through, from the chanting to the ripping off of the head to it being thrown, all of it. That is something that could be obtained with the search warrants. So this is why I am somewhat confident that I would succeed if I had to return to Pittsburgh and seek justice, which I just believe I deserve at this point. So, hold on, I'm going to find the account. I was talking to about legal stuff. I'm actually going to start with footage of being returned and roll backwards. So this is me touching the head after it was returned to the convention center, the David L. Lawrence Convention Center. All right, and given the possibility that what I just said, everything in this video, can be used as evidence under oath, what I'm going to say is I stand corrected. It's mature to correct the record. I did go after him. I did grab his hands. It was an attempt to recover my property. It was recovered, but he did commit the first act of violence and the second act of violence. And my perception of distance may have been off due to consumption of alcohol. I'm going to be as honest and forthright as I can be, but regardless, the head did not just drop. It was ripped off in an act of political violence, and arguably a hate crime against the queer community, which the furry fandom is very much interlinked with. So that is the full confrontation on video. Another correction. I'm so traumatized by this, but I didn't really see the whole footage. But regardless, I am going to act the way I did again. I did nothing wrong. I wanted to have my property recovered by the person who damaged it, and did so willfully. And I didn't really want law enforcement to get involved initially. But what he intended to do was to cause more than $500 worth of damage and terrorize me for my political views that I had the First Amendment right to express during the fireworks, as much as the opposite could have been expressed during the fireworks. But instead, a child was in front of me, and I didn't really want to deal with him or his pretty strongly implied mentality to do the tut-tutting thing is typical of conservative thought. So I acted accordingly, and again, free speech does not give a shit about politeness. Indeed, it is made to protect speech that any government official, from the president down, regardless of political affiliation or party, can see, can witness, can hear, and understand the full opinion of the public in real time. That is the reason the First Amendment exists to begin with, and the Federalist Papers back up this insertion perfectly. Perfectly. And it is great that we have the 14th Amendment that applies these rights to the states as well, like Pennsylvania, where this took place. And also like Minnesota. I'm still traumatized by what happened. And the reason I am posting this on YouTube instead of just submitting it to the sheriffs, who I still said, like, I'm not sure if I have a solid case here. Maybe he would turn it back on me. But he was the one who intended to cause harm, and I was the one who wanted to give him a talking to and make sure that I recovered my property. And that was the intention of all of it. I will say that I was hoping that none of this would happen, that the defendant wouldn't have acted the way he did. But that is the series of events, and why they happened the way they did. And by defendants, currently on YouTube, I mean in the court of public opinion. I mean, he does seem more in the wrong, doesn't he? The only reason you would disagree is because you put the president's feelings above the right of free speech and to criticize the president during America's 250th birthday. If that's your line of reasoning, I don't consider you an American patriot at all. And I just wanted my head back as soon as possible. It was a low traffic night. And I'm thankful that a guy in a Miata got it and that it is recoverable. But I still would like justice done. I still want this man in jail, and I still want him to pay for another head, like completely, just to make up for what he did. And has a warning never to assault and batter someone in that same way again. And with regards to the going to and grabbing the fists, that was an act of self-defense in the property. Like, I don't know if this dude had a gun either. So I was also acting with that logic. Like, was he going to turn around and shoot me? I don't know. But even so, under Pennsylvania law, there is a stand your ground precedent at minimum. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure if it's statute or not. Maybe it is. But regardless, this certainly, absolutely falls within the definition of standing my ground, of wanting my property back, and acting in self-defense, going after someone who acted aggressively, yelled. That covers it pretty much in every jurisdiction. I was defending myself, and this is Pennsylvania law. I live in Minnesota. Okay, I live in the metro region of Minnesota. That's completely beside the point because all the events took place in Pennsylvania. For context, though, under Minnesota law, this might have been an illegal act. But in Pennsylvania law, given all of the context as presented, given the footage you saw, it absolutely isn't. Because Pennsylvania doesn't have what's known as duty to retreat. My body was harmed, my property was damaged, I went after the guy, and I have a right to do this in self-defense after the initial aggressor assaulted and battered me. And that's pretty much the end of that in regards to Pennsylvania law, as I understand it. But what do you think? Should I ask the Allegheny County sheriffs to go after the guy, or should I just leave this as it is on YouTube and let the cards fall where they may from there? I would encourage all of your thoughts sincerely on the matter. And in case it hasn't already been made clear, I do not regret any of my actions, nor do I feel the need to apologize to anyone. The chance that I made, I stand by it, and I will continue to act that way with and without MetroMud. And this has happened a lot in Minnesota, and to be frank, should be the kind of behavior that is seen commonly across the country, especially in unexpected places. Not just at some central events like No Kings, but just in general, all the time, nonstop, to chant stuff like that in public, whether it is here in Minnesota where I lived, where I filmed this testimony, just to make sure my memory was as fresh as possible, or whether it is in a place like New York, whether it's California, Texas, or even Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, doesn't matter. My opinion of the president has not changed, and my desire to express that opinion has only been emboldened by the series of events. So, even with that in mind, the desire to terrorize someone for their opinion and commit a hate crime against a queer person of the queer community. It's a federal thing. I'm not sure if Pennsylvania has it. I know Minnesota does. Um, but regardless, I want justice for what happens. I have a right to seek that justice. I think this guy should go to jail. And do you believe the same thing? And do you believe it's worth pressing charges? I need to get as much information and as much, especially professional, but anyone else who wants to share their knowledge and what they know and how I can get the justice I deserve and seek is also welcome. And that's why I made this video. That's why I posted it on the internet and decided to do this expose. And if you love free speech and the Constitution and the United States, and thus, in a very mutually exclusive way, despise Donald Trump, as always, subscribe if you like, and share if you care. And I also have my blue sky, like, down there. I'm looking at it down there right now. Right there, right there. There it is. You can also follow me there as well. Peace. Except to the guy that did it. All right. All right. Before I go, I just want to make a quick update here. So the head is in the process of being repaired, and I really hope this guy pays for it because he's the one that damaged my head, as seen in that video. Yeah, and in another massive win, for sustainability targets and Minnesota meeting and exceeding its expectations as a well-functioning Nordic social democracy that also exists within the United States. What I'm saying is that Minnesota is a much better governed state than Pennsylvania, and we rightfully earned this reputation. And even being a furry, getting a fursuit head repaired is part of that goal. This looks like a NeoCities ass website, and it even complies with GDPR. I'm going to reject all. Sorry, and it even respects my font choices, my sans serif being branded grotesque, the de facto state font of Minnesota. Anyway, this company, they basically repair and resell fursuits and fursuit parts. They sanitize them and make new fursuits out of old fursuits. They're the only company that does this. They have the legal backing and protection of Minnesota state law, especially when it comes to repairing and replacing parts. There are things that big tech can get away with, a long list of things in a state like Pennsylvania that is absolutely not allowed and has been enforced multiple times here in the state of Minnesota. We're just better governed than that. This is the plans. So Metro Mutt is going to have the jaw hinge replaced. I know this is a bit lower frame rate. I know it's a bit stuttery. It's I was editing a video as you show as you have seen earlier. My CPU is getting slammed right now because I'm getting the captions for most of the video except for this part, which I will have to run this program again in Linux, which is also a great way for Minnesota to meet its sustainability targets. We're like really good at that and have to be because 10,000 lakes anyway. Yeah, I'm rendering this part of the video right now, transcoding it into an easier to edit, um, smaller WebM file size, at least for this machine that I film and edit on clearly at the same time, and also as evidenced by OBS really struggling to film this addendum right now, but I figure that's another important aspect of what you need to know about the situation thus far. A lot fewer potholes too.